Hey, good morning, everyone. Just so folks know, this is a workshop. We're not taking public comment. We're not making any decisions here. It's a little bit of discussion, preliminary discussion on a concept for a project. So this is being live streamed and recorded and certainly open to the public, but kind of the discussion is here around the table, but I would ask folks to use the mic so it does get picked up by the recording. So with that, Mr. Kraft, I'd turn it over to you or to you.
Very good. Can you hear me okay on this?
I can.
So we can hear me at the table. So good morning and welcome. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate that. We're very excited to bring the next craft community into Elbert County. Say your name. So my name is Jim Yates with Kraft Companies, and I'm here with Tim Kraft, Brian Connolly with Otten Johnson, and our planners are Brian Hart and Susan Waite, who are not in attendance here today. Do you need more than that? Okay. Just want to touch on kind of a couple of highlights of Kraft. We design efficient, conservation-minded communities, focusing primarily on water conservation. We couple demand management with landscape covenants, along with reuse and irrigation systems, and those elements all together create a very tight, efficient system that keeps the water on the land and preserves the best use of that water. In addition to that, we design clustered villages that then create larger open space tracts. Those larger open space tracts allow us to improve the habitat, connect our trails, our amenities, and then we kind of wrap dark sky compliance around on top of that. So all those elements really kind of create a conservation community for us. And then lastly, our community partnerships. We definitely like to support a lot of different groups and a lot of different causes in the county. We are working with Mark on supporting economic growth and job growth as well. So I know this map is a little bit hard to see from back here, at least it is for me, but you can kind of see the general shape of it. The location is just on the east side of County Road 29, just on the south side of County Road 174. One thing I want to point out is that the kind of the frontage on both of those roads is somewhat limited. There's a small leg that goes to County Road 29, and then there are 3 legs that touch 174. But what that means for us when we kind of look at designing a project is that the impacts of light and noise and construction and all of those things except for traffic really are interior to kind of the neighbors on the other side of those county roads. It's kind of pulled back into the project. The largest square that is not ours in the middle is a state land board parcel. So again, this is 1,464 acres. Our approach is to have kind of a mixed use, residential, commercial, retail components into this. We're going to start our entrance on the western side, so right off of County Road 29 where you see the word Village 1 there. And that first village is going to have a village center, so that'll be a retail kind of walking village. We'll have our potable water systems in there, so there'll be a couple of facilities that will have power and our wells. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but our wells are kind of strategically placed further south, away from Sun Country, which is on the north side of 174. And then we'll also have our first rec center kind of in that area and a little bit of residential. So that'll give us a real nice entry point. That'll give us a real good sense of place and a good feel to kind of come in from that side. The other thing that it does is it keeps as much of the kind of traffic and impact off of 174 that is, just across the street from Sun Country.
Offhand, that main entrance, how does that align with Miller Ranches on the other side? And they have a main entrance at some point projected about 1.5 miles down. I'm not, it
So
potentially
across
is.
the street is Youngland,
Oh.
and then there's a pretty significant gas line, so there's a pretty big easement across along there. I don't believe there are any structures across the street or any.
Yeah, it's not built.
Not at this point.
No.
And I'm not sure where the Miller property is. We have a
Yeah.
regional map we can look at.
I think the Miller Ranch is a little bit further south of our southern
okay.
border.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we tried our best to kind of figure out where that would not be across the street from somebody who's just trying to get into their property or their neighborhood. Yeah, and I. Correct. Yeah, and so 174 does not continue west up there, but theoretically it could, I think. Yeah, no, that's fine. So anyway, kind of continuing on with just a high level overview of the land plan. Then the road that would go north to 174 from our entrance would be a secondary access point. It would not be intended to be a primary entrance, although, obviously if you lived or were trying to go to that northern third of that leg there, you probably would come in on that side. So, and I guess to that point on the roads, we will establish metropolitan districts to develop our internal infrastructure, roads, stormwater, trails, all amenities, and also to build the improvements for the impacts of our off-site traffic. So they would be able to acquire easements, they would be able to, do the improvements as we move forward and look at the traffic studies. Obviously, we have the updated county master traffic plan. We're working with LSC as well, and they're looking at kind of regional impacts and kind of, the directions that traffic would flow as they leave the property. And then we would also establish a water and sanitation district that would build our potable water system. We currently have our water for this project fully adjudicated and in an amount that is greater than a 300-year supply. And we're continuing to try to develop, additional amounts to grow that. We'd really like to have a larger pool than what your minimum would require. And we have the quite a bit of our water supply is in the deep aquifer, so it's in the Arapahoe. So again, we'll really take a hard look at where we can drill our wells, what the impacts are to those around us, all of those kinds of things. We did have a meeting with Sun Country already. For some reason, Tim wanted to have that initial shot out of the gate. So we sat down at the Sun Country Church and had 30 or 40 people come and share kind of their concerns primarily. And I think by the end of it, Tim, we had a pretty good response to that. Not a response that, hey, we love to see this, but we see that you're trying to evaluate our our issues. And we are, and we're trying to listen, and we're trying to, take into consideration their concerns.
Did County Road 174 come up in your conversations?
It did, but not as much as you would think. It wasn't as emotional because a lot of their entrance is on either off 29 or to the north. They asked if we would pave it, and we said, if that's part of our, impact plan, we want to make sure we put our dollars to where they benefit everybody the most. So, but that's probably somewhat likely that would get paved. I don't know how far east, but as you know, their entrance is, about halfway up our project, so it's not that far in. And I don't know that they were too concerned about going east. It was primarily going west.
Primary concerns, water impacts, or?
Water and traffic congestion, not as much 174. Certainly a lot of questions about 174 going west, and then concerns about 29. Me? Well, then it'll pick it up. So, yeah, is that better?
Where does Saddlehorn come in on the north side there? Is that Saddlehorn is paved right into
What's it?
174?
I believe that matches up with the northern entrance from EC West going to 174.
I don't have a good region map here. We can maybe pull one up.
I'm looking at the county map, and I'm not plugged in there, but it is offset a little bit. It looks like it's offset by probably at least a quarter mile. However that lines up there or doesn't line up, I mean, we want to make sure that from a traffic standpoint that works.
Greg, I think it's the entrance that's shown right in when you go into the state land board property to the east. There's a driveway access on the north side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So again, that's certainly an intersection we want to be sensitive to, and either improve or make sure that we don't, cause a lot of difficulty for them getting in and out of that side. Yeah, right. Yeah, and that's another one. There's a couple that are closer to 29 that are just single residences or single properties. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, we the use of the metro districts will obviously create the water and sanitation district or the facilities, and then the metropolitan districts will kind of create the road infrastructure. The dry utilities is kind of the last piece of that puzzle. There is a substation planned. We've met with IREA several times, and just yesterday. And they are planning a substation at, I call it Deer Valley. I think it's called Morstead, maybe another name. But it's basically directly to the west and north, kind of kitty corner on there. And then they are also looking closer to Kiowa Bennett Road. So they have two substations planned, and then they have a connection in between the two. Yeah.
So I think just, we're obviously here at our concept brief, so this is very early on in the process. Our next step after we hear feedback from you will be to have a neighborhood meeting, which is required by the regulations before we submit the PUD application. We'll then work through the PUD application. Our plan is to also do a development agreement with the PUD, so that will memorialize all of our infrastructure obligations and other benefits that we're bringing to the county. We'll also, as part of that, ask for vested property rights we haven't decided what period of time we would ask for that, but we'll work with Bart and Greg on that. We'll also then be bringing, subsequent to that, or I guess some might be concurrently, would be our preliminary plat, and then there will be subsequent final plats, and we'll also need to bring district service plan approvals to you as well. So there's a lot of work to do over the next probably few years to get this ready to actually build a community out there, but we're looking forward to doing that.
So I think with that, we can turn it over to questions and kind of dive into the areas that are, top of your mind.
Top of your head?
No, this is just a concept plan, so we don't have things like traffic reports and special districts and how they're going to pay for paving the road and all of that good stuff. The one question I have is, do you have some sense of timing?
Yeah, we actually see this as a really good time to kind of go through the process right now as things are realigning in the economy. We would like to get into our formal application in. We have a formal community meeting set up for, I believe it's the 24th of August, and not a whole lot after that, maybe the end of August, roughly, we would get our formal application and get the process started. I think with that, as Brian said, our district application, our service plans will not be in time for the November election, but they will be for the May election. So that's going to be a little bit out of sync of our application, and we'll kind of have to figure out how to deal with that because we'll rely on the approval of those to do certain things as we go through the PUD and preliminary plan application. But yeah, we would like to get out, get everything through, early to mid next year, first or second quarter of next year, get into the summer. We're already looking at drilling a well on site, and we'll initially use that for construction water and kind of some establishment water and things like that.
Yeah, the water, you've mentioned that you're probably going to use the Arapahoe, which kind of caught me by surprise. Is the Denver not prospective there?
The Denver is available, and it is prospective. However, it's, I guess, our view that with the Arapahoe being deeper and somewhat disconnected, it really just kind of gives us not only horizontal separation from our neighbors, but some vertical separation from our neighbors. And so we will, at some point, drill a Denver, primarily as just kind of some kind of backup if something else were to go wrong. But I think our vision is to have probably more Arapahoe wells than Denver.
I think the deeper well is a positive.
Yeah, and we do too. And we get the message loud and clear, and we'll do everything in our power to explore those first.
And that's something that really came in as a result of our initial meeting with the Sun Country neighbors.
Do you have a sense of the residential and commercial mixture that you're looking at, if any of that, and plus your densities, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so at this point, we're kind of approaching it in a manner that is similar to Independence. It's been successful from a market acceptance perspective and hopefully from a county perspective. And so we're approaching it that way. We have 50% open space, kind of a commitment. And as you see, the topography and the way that the parcel is shaped is going to really kind of see how the rest of that falls out. But I think what you'll see are some clustered villages. We would like to expand the product offering a little bit and get into, I'm not sure if you'd call it affordable, but maybe attainable housing products that are a little bit smaller. There are some kind of these hammerhead 4-pack. They're detached homes, but they kind of fit nicely together, and they're a little bit lower maintenance. There's some patio type products that do that. Possibly some townhomes and getting into, some attached, not high-rise condos, but things that would be fitting of the area. It's getting more difficult for builders to take on the liability of attached products, so there are some kind of alternatives that detach them by small amounts. But we want to explore all of those products so we can get some lower price points and a good mix.
I was going to say, we've got a housing needs assessment going on under the economic development
Yes, and
department. So if you can keep tied with them on I mean,
Yes.
I know you have products you want to sell. We probably have products we need, and in the middle,
And
yeah,
we're
how do we make that all fit together on a project such as this?
wonderfully open to guidance on that. We've been working both with planning as well as econ dev, making sure that we've got employment identified as part of this project. We've also been given the guidance of, call it variable or alternative housing products. But if you guys have additional guidance, we will make sure we can work to incorporate that.
And I think we're looking at having the results of that in the December timeframe, so, but I know the product's developing, so.
Yeah, is that timing kind of like later this year, end of the year?
Yes.
Roughly?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that fits, even though I'm saying we're putting in an application, that doesn't necessarily lock us down on product, and as you know, we'll have many plats going forward, so lots of opportunities for us to evolve, and there might be products that come up over the next few years that, you know, one of our builders at Independence, Lennar, they're looking at, you know, a number of different construction methodologies and changes, and they, for example, kind of pre-build all their trusses. And so it's not a manufactured home per se, but they pre-build a lot of, or pre-assemble a lot of components. And I think that can really help take some of the price down too, or some of the costs, so, yeah.
With that location, what kind of commercial kind of activity are you thinking? You've mentioned that would be part of the development. Are we talking about shopping, or are we talking about offices, or what kind of things are you thinking about?
Again, still at the early phases and haven't conducted our feasibility study to look at the economic impact and the taxes generated. But the initial goal is to have what we're kind of calling a mini Main Street or village concept, where we're clustering some of the needs for the community itself as it's ramping up, such as sales offices and the like, with the potable water facility, but also incorporating some form of office as well as some form of retail. It's not going to be a big box Walmart type thing. This is going to be more like hopefully a restaurant, a microbrewery, and other associated neighborhood retail. And then a 1 or 2 story office facility, probably some sort of a co-working type thing to accommodate small businesses in the areas and kind of draw from a 5 or 10 mile radius there.
What was the other gray area on the east side that you're going up both sides?
That's Robinson Brick.
Oh, Robinson Brick, okay. I was trying to think what was there, so, okay. This is EC West, are you looking at EC East?
We've got all the other directions covered. We have an EC North and an EC South, but we do not have an EC East.
That's true.
So that was a good guess. Just to kind of add to the commercial conversation, what I would describe the initial phase is convenience retail. So it's going to be, you know, hair salons, dry cleaners, you know, some of those kinds of things, not necessarily in a strip mall format, but some of those types of entities, and then really try to attract in some businesses as we start to look at EC North and EC South. They, I think, have greater potential for jobs and for businesses, yards, you know, some manufacturing. We'd love to get in some kind of technology, and then medical care. So healthcare is a big one for me personally, not because of my health, but I think it's really important to get something in there. It'll be most likely an urgent care type of facility, but there are great models now in rural areas that have urgent care that they also mix with like physical therapy, things that or destination you would go there regularly to do knee rehab on your knee or something. So some things like that we really want to kind of push into that. And then last one I would add is education. You know, we'd really like to add some kind of educational component, maybe even alternative education, whether it's trades or there's a lot of different other types of alternative education that we have the space, we'll have the people, we'll have a lot of those kinds of things. We'll bring a lot of our trades out. You know, there's going to be, you know, construction guys out there for 10, 15, 20 years, and so they will support something like that quite a bit. So we need to capture that opportunity.
Without knowing the line, is this, do you know whether this falls within which school district, which fire district? Is this, is it?
We're every fire district.
Pretty close.
Yeah, okay,
So we have Rattlesnake and Kiowa split our property,
okay.
and then Elizabeth is on the other side of 29.
Okay.
So we kind of have all three of those together, and again, we are talking to them. We are talking to each of them. They are all open to doing something together, whether that is formally in name or just, you know, kind of sharing facilities, sharing potentially training facilities, housing, and, you know, all of those kinds of things. So we're in the very early throes of that with each of those. And I think Cass at Rattlesnake is probably right now been the lead on helping us to kind of figure it out. But that's, you know, just because we probably spent more time with him.
Say the two-story office building might be something they're certainly interested in. There's not a lot of two-story anything out here, so.
Yeah, we floated by him a 5-story building, and he didn't think that was.
Do you have any questions of us?
What, is Robinson Brick, are they mining clay and stuff there?
It seems as though the mine was dormant for a long time, but we have seen some activity there just recently. We have reached out to them a number of times over, call it the last year plus, that we've been working to get this far along in the process. It seems like they're pretty content with their operations and are moving forward as is.
Okay, I didn't think they'd been doing much up there. That's why I was wondering, you know, if they were, you know, and you've got homes on either side and they're out there with their equipment trying to mine, whether it's clay or whatever. I know the one that they had down on 150, they're not there that often when they're in and out. And that's why I was just curious how much activity they would have to affect your neighborhoods if they're got big equipment.
It's a great point. It seems like it's been pretty dormant, but we would definitely prefer to incorporate that into this project.
Okay.
So, and I'll just add to that a little bit. Two things. So they're that top right gray square, and the red that's kind of the circle there in the middle, and you can kind of see their operation pad. They're pushing up towards the road. There's a decent amount of buffer, and then a pretty significant drainage that kind of cuts through us and down up through them that makes that difficult. Right now, what we're looking at just on the other side are that darker green on this map, by the way, is open space. So everything directly south of that are irrigation ponds and open space. The lighter green, so you would have the one to actually the two to the east and to the south of them that would be, you know, I guess somewhat closer to them. They mine, what they've represented to us is they mine enough to keep their permit active. So it's not a like cranking it out, but it's a great comment that you had, because next year that could change and they could come in and, you know, they have the right to mine it. So I don't know, they're out of Germany. So it's not Robinson Brick anymore, even though I said that. It's the old Robinson Brick site, and it was bought by a company that's headquartered out of Germany. And they do have a local operator, but they don't have a heavy presence here. So it's been hard to kind of get a lot of information from them, like what are you planning on to do in the future? And I think, you know, the parent company has a pretty long-term view of they're not really interested in selling any assets. So.
It looks like you guys are immediately adjacent to the Elizabeth Park and Rec District. Is that something you've talked to them at all about incorporating in or coordinating with them?
Yeah, so I've had a few conversations with JC, and we are not currently in their district. We have a really good relationship and partnership with them in Independence, and we certainly want to continue that relationship. I don't know if it would be in the form of like an IGA type of, you know, agreement between us, or if we would actually kind of, quote, include into them. We have not gotten that far, but we definitely want to, you know, kind of support, you know, our approach here of regional trails, and the reason we carry as much open space as we do is to really have our assets and our facilities be regional, and obviously connecting with the Park and Rec District makes a lot of sense to us. At this point, I don't know in what form.
You guys have some sense as to where you'd like Core to go with their overhead utility lines? I realize you're working with them. They haven't applied with us yet, but they probably will here in the relatively near future.
So I'll be good, Tim. There is an existing utility corridor along 174. It's power lines that I assume, but I am not 100% sure that it goes to Sun Country or at least some of the other properties there to the north. Our preference would be to stay in the existing utility corridor. It may need, and from their process, they may need some kind of a change in what they have because it's probably going from local to transmission lines or something like that, but it still makes sense to us to follow that corridor. They've looked at kind of diagonally cutting through the Sevelin properties. So on our western edge to the north, right at the corner of 174 and 29, there's 3 shoe boxes. Those are all Joyce Seveland, and then the next one down is Chang, and they've cut diagonally down through and then cut through us across the state land board and then back continuing on through there. That was one of the alignments that they proposed to us because it was designed prior to us having this property, or not designed, but it was kind of identified as a route. And because there weren't any other structures or, you know, development there, they thought that would be okay. We pushed back on that and said we did not like that. It does 2 things. It increases the cost of that line significantly because every time you have to turn from a straight line on a power line, especially a transmission line, it's very expensive, and it had like 7 turns. But they were trying to basically avoid being within a quarter mile at that time of an existing structure. So we've had a lot of conversations with them. They believe that the construction would be more cost efficient, and both in time and money to just go straight up 174. If we do any road improvements there, we can kind of coordinate those efforts as well. So I think there's some potential synergy along that. They're going from the north side of the road, I'll say, because west of 29, where the substation's going to be, somehow they've got to get to the south side when they get all the way over to Kiowa Bennett. I think it's a Vernon Miller property they have on that side that is on the south side of the road. So they're kind of going, somehow they got to get across. It's not going to be a perfect straight line, but I think it minimizes the complications and the cost to follow 174.
That's right. And like their planned substation for which they've already acquired on the Miller property, is that right?
Yeah, it's, as I understand it, they own or have the option to purchase or acquire both ends of that, the Morstead side and the Vernon Miller side.
I guess similar to electric, how close does Black Hills or natural gas come? That's kind of a nowhere, middle of nowhere for them, is it not? Or
Well, would you mind talking about some of I guess the planned phase out of gas?
So what we've been told is that 1.5, 2 years ago, our governor passed a legislation that is requiring them to eliminate gas. So it's being reduced over time. And there, Black Hills is basically saying there's no point in us coming out because by the time that gets there, it won't be exhausted, but it will be at something less than it is today. So there's a mandate to reduce the gas usage over time. Having said that, we did have a conversation with CORE, IREA, about what's that going to take then to, heat houses, and by the way, we're adding cars and, everything else, some people are. And as time goes on, the demands, and they said, and I don't know how much planning this has behind it, that it will double the requirements per house. That's how they would look at it. So if you go to an all-electric community, we have not made that decision. We don't know. I think there are a lot of people who like gas and appreciate, especially, when your power goes out, you can still get gas, heat your house, some of those kind of things. But that's not, I'm not sure where that
I
is
know we
in
can't
my
fix
crystal
it at this
ball.
table, but I think we're sitting at about close to 9,000 of our 10,000 homes are either gas or propane. So, it's nice to think it's going to be reduced, or if that's what you think is right, but that leaves pretty much every resident in this county in a lurch.
Yeah, in some form of conversion. And I don't know, I didn't ask the question about propane, if you're in a rural setting and you have propane, if that falls under this or not, so I don't know that answer. But as far as kind of municipal scale, they were very clear on, that's going to go away. And it's really expensive now. I mean, Independence is not very far out of the shot pattern, and it's blisteringly expensive to get gas run into that community. Yeah.
On a similar note, although probably not feasible today just with some of the programs CORE has in place, but they expire in 2025, is the county open to solar being located out in this area?
Talking more of a solar farm, or are you talking more on individual homes or buildings?
So right now, at least one of our builders has solar on every home. All of the homes at Independence are pre-wired for solar on the roof. It seems like it does a good, I guess that aside, looking at doing more of a clustered solar program in some of the open space here.
Like the solar garden type of concept.
Right.
Yeah, currently,
If it leads to more self-sufficient community, I think we're open to it, or I am.
yeah, CORE has, well, all the energy providers have a mandate of a certain percentage of renewable. As Tim said, they have an agreement with Excel to provide that component for them, so they didn't have to develop that on their own, and it does end in a few more years, not too far out now. And so they're starting to look at then potential communities that could help them provide a piece of their renewable requirement. And so that's something we would like to evaluate. I'm not sure how or where that fits in, but
There's a solar farm that's been approved on County Road 152 and the Kiowa Bennett Road. I can't remember what it is, 50 or 60 acres or something like that. And it's never been built, but it's right on the core line too. So, but we can't be putting the solar farms on open space because then it's not open space. On people's roofs, that's their choice. I'm not going to make that decision.
Yeah, that solar, it may change, but they haven't built it because they couldn't get their power sold. Excel or Core was going to take part of it, but they couldn't get the rest of it sold, so they haven't built it. So I imagine down the road there may be some more incentive, but right now there's no incentive for them to build that farm.
yeah, I talked to them about that location specifically, and again, they're waiting until this agreement expires, and they can't, in their view, they can't legally enter into an agreement even to start later until it ends. So they're all kind of waiting for the existing exclusive agreement to expire to do that up. But that one is on Corps' radar. They do want to develop it. Not to speak for them, but I think it's just a timing thing for them right now. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the public infrastructure that you expect to put in as part of this project that not only is what we see, but perhaps what we don't see?
What don't you see? Yeah, so again, I think where our mindset is right now from a design perspective is following a lot of the principles at Independence. I think we feel like, so the road that you see here, this is kind of our spine road or our backbone roads. And I kind of stole some principles from backcountry on this, which is a little bit more of a, it's not a rural lane, but like there's not, the stormwater there's significant easements on each side of the road, and the open space kind of follows it, and it's a lot more native. And we're using swales and kind of natural landforms along the road to accommodate that. We'll put our trails along that. And I don't know if you're familiar with the backcountry, but there are kind of some elements in there I thought really fit well here. So that infrastructure is, again, a little bit more native as opposed to more concrete and piping and large ponds. They're kind of almost like linear. We're using on the south of the Robinson Brick property, that's a concept that is called wet meadows, and it kind of has these ponds that cascade down, and they kind of go from one down to the other, and so there's some concepts there. We would like to look at rainwater harvesting and some concepts like that, whether that's integrated at the lot level or at a kind of local neighborhood level. Obviously, there's a lot of legality with that and process with those kinds of things that we would have to evaluate and see, how that goes. But, we're pretty big fans of keeping the water on the site if we can.
So where I was going with that was more off-site. So I see all of this, and thank you for some of that additional info, but like 174, is that something you're expecting to extend over to Kiowa Bennett? How's that intersection going to look and feel at Kiowa Bennett? As you're connecting over to 29, is that anticipated to be a signalized intersection? And I realize you may not have, gone that far with like traffic studies and such, but kind of what are some of those off-site expectations?
Yeah, so there is a county master traffic study out that kind of, I'll say, identifies maybe priorities is the best way to say it. And then we're using the same traffic engineer, or one of them, LSC, who we'll look at, as we further define the project and the timing and the phasing and the density and the commercial uses and all those things, then that'll start to show where traffic units get pushed out onto different roads. And so, initially our view is what's called the warrants, the traffic warrants, the intersection warrants, that's what's going to drive kind of when and what gets done. We don't feel particularly strongly that we have to, do additional things for our project. We just want the traffic to flow and function and, work. I think our view, at least now, is most of the traffic is going to go north or west. Maybe some, going down to Castle Rock. Not a whole lot going east unless, you're going to the airport or something like that at this point. That certainly can change as there are reasons to go east, but right now it's kind of a westward flow, I guess.
We kind of talked briefly about EC East.
Yes.
And kind of some of the plans for that, and I realize this isn't a concept brief about that.
Yeah.
Given the number of residential units that you've proposed here, the amount of commercial that you've kind of talked about as well is probably a little bit less than you might expect for the number of people that are proposed here. And it's been my understanding that EC East is kind of picking that up. So there might be more traffic heading eastbound on 174 than you might otherwise expect. So it's kind of that balance of where are these people that are potentially going to come and live here, where are they going to go for their services, and then how are they going to get there? So I guess I realize you may not have hard and fast info, but as 174 wants to be probably your major service road to get out to Kiowa Bennett, there's a bridge there as well as it crosses the creek, and so there's a variety of potential public infrastructure. It's really kind of trying to figure that out a little bit, if you have a sense of that.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's, and just to clarify, in our terminology, the EC East, because you are correct in the direction east, we have a north and a south piece on the east. So we call them north and south just for the audio record. East and is equivalent to north and south when we refer, if you hear those different references. And yeah, we definitely will look at kind of the traffic patterns and the flow of all of that, and are very interested and working hard to kind of crack the code on what we can develop on that east side and what types of industries we can attract. We've had some conversation with Mark about that and kind of, trying to figure some things out. The one really nice feature is there's a lot of dark fiber along Kiowa Bennett Road. And so that, that in and of itself starts to make that whole area feel less isolated, and that's, if you can get connectivity, you can do a lot of things from a business, from a residential, from, commercial perspectives.
Didn't mention County Road 29, and again, probably the same answer, but that's something that probably needs to be looked at in terms of improvements that might need to be made along that area. So just for the record.
Yeah, we assumed we'd at least have to stripe it.
Back on water, just the water treatment, water reuse, recycling, how is that technology? I know it all continues to evolve, but you had state-of-the-art in Independence. Is the state-of-the-art improved, or is there more opportunity to reuse more water? It seems like every few years there's almost a order of magnitude change or in what can be done. I know the water capture, I know you talked, I think right now the state's still at 110 gallons per rooftop or so that an individual can pull into a rain barrel, but I don't know beyond that what's going on statewide.
So overall, this community's water and sewer system is going to look a lot like the Independence system. It will rely on reuse. It will rely on highest level of treatment going back to the on-lots through separate pipes and the likes. In addition, We've actually gotten a little bit smarter on like the planting materials and the like, in part by, we brought in a couple of different groups, Denver Urban Gardens and actually the Butterfly Museum. And so they've been helping us with like pollinator programs and like things that are a little bit better for the insects in the area, which help the birds, which help everything else. But yes, the technology has fortunately gotten a little better across the system as a whole, and we will continue to pioneer the next gen of everything that's available for us.
One thing, I'll just add to that. At Independence, the math has actually been materially better than what we anticipated. Partly because all the homes are new and they all have the new low or high efficiency but low water use appliances. Dishwashers, shower heads, all of those things aren't reliant on people modifying or changing or upgrading. Those are all kind of standard and required by code now. And so we are consuming less water per household so far than what we thought. We still need a little bit more time. We're at about 240 homes now completed, and it's, you know, it'll continue to evolve. But that's been really good news. And one of the surprising pieces of it is it's really the people. The people are really embracing, the ones that are coming to Independence are embracing this kind of low impact development lifestyle, which is not, you know, our street lights come down. We don't have street lights all over the place. We have, you know, the water conservation they're taking to heart. And so that's been a really positive thing to kind of witness, if you will, and they're proud of it. They talk about it, they like it, and so that's been good. So I think that, you know, as Tim said, we certainly intend to take every lesson learned we can and carry it over into kind of the new community.
So do you think if you got started or got improved or whatever, that by the time you got everything in place, the recession might be over, and is that part of your timing?
If you're issuing insurance policies on this sort of thing, we'd love to talk. But, you know, realistically, if we're moving through the entitlement timeline that Jim mentioned earlier, we're probably another 2 years on the infrastructure side to get the first lot up and ready. So, yeah, we're already looking at a different point in the cycle than we are today.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because I mean, who knows how, hopefully it won't last too long, but I know the housing market and stuff is pretty much gone away as far as any sales and stuff, because I know up at the Abstract, it's really dropped off, you know, in the last month or two, and I know it's got to be for new homes and things like that.
You're absolutely right. The market shifted dramatically, but we're still operating on the fundamental belief that Colorado is at least 150,000 homes undersupplied, and that's part of the reason why attainability is such a big issue for so many families.
Yeah, I know when we had the state demographer out here, she had a graph showing the shortage of housing units over the last few years. So, you know, that 150,000 makes sense.
Scary.
Yeah, I think the fundamentals are still there. It's we can get the kind of political nonsense kind of above all of that to calm down, then, you know, interest rates settle in a little bit. Kids are now getting back into school, and, you know, if you go back prior to COVID, summer is always a slow selling time. It's a cyclical. During COVID, it wasn't, because people weren't going anywhere, or wasn't as much so. So it's, the good news is we do have that to fall back on. If things slow down, there's still the need for housing, and that won't get fixed during the slowdown. So, you know, as it starts to turn, hopefully we'll catch that upswing on there.
Do you have the mineral estate on the property? Have you thought about looking at oil and gas as a possibility? It's not too far from other productive areas in our county for oil and gas.
Yeah, I assume we'll do the same thing that we have at Independence, which is we retain those rights. We're not actively drilling on Independence, and we really haven't had any conversations to do so, but we definitely want to retain control of those rights on the property.
So we've definitely appreciated the partnership that we've had over, the last 7-8 years now with Elbert County. We're immensely proud of the Independence community. We really like the way that's come together. But as a reminder, Independence was inherited zoning for us. This is one where we truly get to start with a fresh PUD. And we're not being coy on like the density and some of the offsite questions that you asked, but we just don't know what that density is yet. We do think that we have ample water to supply a variety of types. But when you ask what kind of questions do we have for y'all, like telling us what type of housing types and products ideally the county would like to see will help us inform that density, which will then help us be able to complete the traffic studies and complete our programming for the retail and the like. We have been in pretty consistent conversations with your economic development folks, so we think we have a pretty good idea and have been trying to tailor the retail and the commercial to meet all of that. But the next piece for us would really be some additional guidance to the extent that you have it for housing types.
And I'd just add to that, maybe an ask on our side is just a little bit of flexibility in the zoning. This is, probably a 15, 20-year project. And, life's changed a lot in the last 20 years, and it's definitely changing in the next 20. And so to the extent that we can have a little bit of flexibility in what's allowed in the zoning, just in that, like on commercial, we don't know what brick and mortar is going to look like. I don't know if it's going to be kind of integrated a little bit more into the residential neighborhoods. It may not feel as traditional as it does to you today in Elbert County, not having too much in there. I'm not saying that's where it's going. I need to have a little bit of flexibility of what we can do, not outside of any reasonable norms, but just.
Yeah, I understand.
We can't lock every single.
If you're talking that time frame to build for the past isn't wise, but I think that best place for that is articulated in the design guides and what are triggers for change.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Just kind of like we do with the road impacts, right? There's kind of milestones, and when we get to this level, this turn lane needs to be added, or those kind of things.
Outside of this, but since you had mentioned the water usage being materially less than what you'd projected, I think that would be good for us to know too, or what those numbers do look like, because the questions always come up and or concerns, and I think to be able to show what was projected, what's actually happening would be very useful going forward, just in general discussions with the community.
Absolutely will do.
Any other questions or comments?
No, the only comment I have is utilities and what you guys have brought up in terms of the items that you've got to look at. It'll be interesting to see how you educate us on what you're going to do, because the whole idea of making it 100% electricity puzzles me, but that has to do with my background. But so tell us how it's going to work, and the idea of having a solar unit over there, I have no objection to that at all. But it is not open space.
If you got any closing comments, I think we're pretty much good. I appreciate it.
we're really excited about this. Like, this is going to be a fun project. I think we're past what normally happens in development, where it takes a couple of years to get through the understanding of code and like the hot buttons of the community. But we've been working together long enough that I think we're past all of that, and we're trying to design something that satisfies the county's needs as best we can. As always, please let us know if you guys have additional comments or questions. We're happy to satisfy anything, and we're going to be down here a lot over the next 12 months. So yeah, would love to hear additional thoughts or comments as we move through this. As part of what we've demonstrated through the Independence community is we'll continue to do the outreach, the proactive referral agency meetings, and working with the other stakeholders in the community, as we've already done to get to this level of design, but we'll continue to do so as we move forward.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.